All right, let's continue our discussion with Cosatu's Matthew Parks. This regarding public office bearers set to receive a 3% salary increase. Now, this is all despite a plea for a lower adjustment by Minister of Finance Enoch Godongwana. Matthew, thank you so much for coming back to continue this conversation with us. You were just narrating the dissatisfaction with regards to this 3% wage increase. My question was, what was then the alternative recommendation from US Cosatu?
Yeah. So apologies for earlier, my camera had overheated. Apologies for that. So look, I think the Minister of Finance had made a positive recommendation of a 1.5% increase. We think that could have been a fair increase. Part of the problem right now is that there's no space for public consultation with society at large or even trade unions. So the commission, which deals with the remuneration of public office bearers, including judges, simply makes a recommendation and then sends it, or consults with cabinet and sends it to the president. So we think that's an inherent conflict of interest. Because obviously, if you're going to consult those who've got a vested interest, like politicians, of course, they're going to tell you and cheer you on to give them a huge increase. We think there's a need to consult organized labor as trade unions, society at large, to say, do you think politicians really deserve such increases? There's also a need for not only for them to consult the public at large, including consulting with unions, but also to consult with around the ministerial handbook, because often we've seen time and again that politicians are getting excessive perks, like we saw a year ago with the free electricity and rates and so forth, free water, etc. We think we need to have a proper discussion about what's the appropriate level of remuneration to give to our public office bearers, what to expect out of them, what's the accountability. But the current situation right now, we think, is offensive to nurses and public servants, to police officers, to teachers, to cleaners who are really earning a pittance. And at the same time, society at large has been struggling, often because of the failure of politicians, not all of them, but many of them across the state.
Yeah, and we've often seen, public officials, you just named some of them, just in terms of nurses in government, workers in government, your workers, your police officers. We've seen a whole lot of strikes, right, just in terms of appealing for increases, and it hasn't been the best or successful of journeys for them. So I suppose this funds, you're saying, could go a long way in bringing that relief to those workers who at this point are not earning much during this economic climate.
Yes, and look, if the state's pleading poverty, then that means even more so that every single spare cent we have, let's shift it towards nurses who are filling for 2 or 3 vacancies in our hospitals, dealing with long queues of patients. Let's shift it to our teachers who are dealing with rising levels of children in our township schools. Let's give it to police officers who are risking their life and limb, dealing with heavily resourced criminal syndicates and gangs. But also we're seeing, because of these increases to politicians and to judges, a rising level of the wage gap in the public sector. It might take a nurse 9 years to earn what a politician might earn in a year. And that says that something's wrong. We remain the most unequal society in the world, and yet we are allowing this to continue by giving ever rising increases to our politicians, whilst at the same time we're pleading poverty to cleaners and security guards, to nurses and teachers and police officers.
So with that being said, has Cosatu tabled, its stance on this 3% increase? Have you communicated at all with, the government, with Parliament, with regards to where you stand?
We have been raising for many, many years to Treasury, to Parliament, in the lines, to government, etc. Obviously, it falls in deaf ears at times. At times, also, it's a bit of a conflict of interest because you're raising with the very people who've got a vested interest in giving themselves an increase. So that's a problem. We think there's a need now to review the terms of reference for this commission, which oversees the increases or makes recommendations for increases for public office bearers and judges, because right now it doesn't provide for space for public comment. And this is in contrast and contradiction with all the other requirements in the Constitution, which says that any policy or legislation or tax, etc., or budget, there should be a space for public consultation to raise inputs of society and to make those voices and those views heard and accommodated.
Yeah, and I suppose the conversation, Matthew, is, and I see also in your statement that you read that should the most unequal country in the world be speaking about spending more money and, increasing the comfort zones of these office bearers, because there's really a gap here between, the have-nots, the poor, as well as these political office bearers.
No, there is, and there's a huge consequence to the state. We've seen a rising level of the brain drain from the state of skilled public servants like nurses who are going to the private sector or going to Dubai, like doctors who
I seem to have lost Matthew Parks just once again. Of course, the Cosatu parliamentary spokesperson, Matthew Parks, joining us this morning, talking more about the 3% wage increase, which they say is going towards office bearers, as per Cyril Ramaphosa's declaration, but they're not too happy with that decision. Could have gone to our nurses, our teachers, even police officers, who at this stage are not earning enough, at least to give them some cushion during these economic times.